open your hearts, open your spirits to what you're going to hear today. Grab on to at least one idea, because if we don't start spreading the ideas, who's going to?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lou, for that lovely introduction. I'm not going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about freedom. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the value of freedom and ask you a question that I don't want you to answer, which is, may freedom be worthwhile to die for? Eleutheria I thanatos, freedom or death. Libertad or muerte, liberty or death. These are the national mottos of Greece, the birthplace of democracy, and Uruguay. Macam Azatuthium, if my Armenian is any good, I pronounced that right. Freedom or death, the motto of the Armenian independence movement. Live free or die. We know that one. It's the state motto of New Hampshire. And frankly, it's the only motto of any state that I know. Why? Because it's on all their license plates, right? So I ask you, are these slogans, is that all they are? Or is there something more here? Do these expressions speak of a willingness, if confronted with a horrible choice, freedom or death, to choose freedom above all? Oh, there we go. So first of all, I'd like to define or explain what I mean by freedom. So if you go online or on the dictionary and look up freedom, you're going to find many definitions, and that's okay, because freedom means many things, right? But for today, I want to narrow the focus. I'll ask you to think about freedom as a state of being or a concept that can be categorized in two ways: freedom from or freedom to. So for example, freedom from slavery, freedom from oppression, freedom from tyranny. Freedom to speak, freedom to assemble, freedom to worship, and so on and so forth. In this country, perhaps we take these freedoms for granted sometimes. We have inalienable rights guaranteed by a constitution, and I think we all share a common, strong belief that those rights, so granted, are our fundamental birthright. What instead if we lived in a land where tyranny, slavery, and oppression ruled the day? What if our freedom or our loved ones' freedoms were endangered? In those circumstances, how would you respond? What would you do? What sacrifices would you be willing to make? Would you be willing to put your life on the line for freedom? Now, I'm not going to ask you to answer that question. But while you ponder that, I'd like to recite a poem to you. 18th century poem by Ernst Arndt. The God who made iron grow did not desire slaves. Thus he gave saber, sword, and spear to man in his right hand. Thus he gave him bold courage, the wrath of the freedom of speech. So he would prevail until the last drop of blood, until death in the struggle. Wow, pretty powerful words. What do they say? What do they mean? I'll leave it to you to interpret. But it asks some questions. Is freedom divine? Have we been given the gift of tools, and most importantly, courage to fight, and even die for freedom? Well, once again, I'm not going to answer those questions. I can't, and I won't. But what I will do is I'm going to tell you some stories. I'm going to tell you some stories about humans and even animals that when presented with a similar choice, freedom or death, answered in the affirmative. They accepted the challenge. But first, let me talk about a song we all know so well, a hymn, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Written in 1861 by Julia Ward Howe, it went viral, or whatever viral was in the Civil War, and it quickly became the unofficial anthem of the Union Army. We all know those words, right? Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Powerful beginning. And then later in the song, there's lyrics that say, as he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. It's sung at presidential inaugurations. 3 days after 9/11, with the royal family in attendance, at St. Paul's Cathedral in London, the congregation sang the battle hymn in sympathy and solidarity with all of us. So those words, let me tell you about my favorite, perhaps, performance. It's the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and the West Point Band, July 4th, 2018, at night at West Point. I recommend that you get your headphones, put them on, and listen to it. It's so powerful and so moving. But you'll notice that those words that we just talked about, let us die to make men free, were changed. They changed them to let us live to make men free. Okay, that's kind of, positive, life-affirming, maybe politically correct. And many modern performances and renditions of the battle hymn tweak it that way. Change that one word, die, to live. But I'll tell you, the Union soldiers marching south to face their destiny and perhaps their death, they sang, let us die to make men free. They sang of sacrifice. They sang of the high cost of freedom. And the price, frankly, they were willing to pay. We witnessed very recently a horrific murder, Charlie Kirk's assassination. Charlie Kirk, among other things, was a champion of free speech. He believed in the power and the purpose of civil discourse. And for that, he was willing to risk all. He faced constant death threats, and yet he chose to prevail, and he had the courage to continue on. Just this past week, on what would have been Charlie's 32nd birthday, his widow Erica, at the White House, accepted the Presidential Medal of Freedom, our nation's highest civilian honor, with these words. We're here today not only to celebrate Charlie's birthday, but to honor a truth that he gave his entire life to, and that's freedom. Wow. Let me tell you another story, if you remember. Tiananmen Square, 1989. Some of you may not have been born then. There were 3 months of protest, starting roughly around April 15th, by students, continuing on to June 4th, at which point in time, martial law was declared, and the so-called People's Liberation Army, the military, with tanks and guns, brutally and violently suppressed the protest. You might also remember this image from that day, an iconic photo of a solitary man holding a briefcase, of all things, standing in front of a column of tanks, forcing them to halt. Well, believe it or not, we don't know what happened to that man. We don't know his name. It's never been revealed. But for that anonymous man, for the protesters, perhaps hundreds and even thousands that died that day, for Charlie, for our soldiers, freedom is not just a slogan. It's a choice they made and a price they paid. So, what is it about freedom that makes us willing to sacrifice everything for that? Again, I just leave that question out there for you to ponder. And while you do that, let me tell you one more story. This one's an animal story, a story about a leopard and a dog. So a dog was being chased by a leopard, and to escape, he went through a high window into a small cabin. Actually, it was an outhouse. The leopard followed. They were inside and they were trapped. But against all odds, through the entire night, the leopard never attacked. They were found the next morning by park rangers. So what could possibly overcome the primordial instinct of a leopard to hunt, kill, and eat? Well, researchers, experts, if you will, said the only plausible explanation is that the instinct for freedom in the leopard was greater than hunger, the instinct for hunger. Well, so I think freedom is precious. I know it's dear. And I hope all of us honor and revere those who have made sacrifices, even ultimate sacrifices for freedom. I don't know what I would do if I was presented with that choice between freedom and death. And frankly, I don't think any of us know until that moment was upon us. But I do hope that I'll be found worthy of the words in Lee Greenwood's song, "I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And finally, I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today." Thank you.